In this video, we continue to solve questions for Science Paper 1 2022. So, we start with A7. A7 reads, which of the following is not an electromagnetic wave? A. Gamma ray, B. Infrared, C. Ultrasound, and D. Ultraviolet. So this question requires you to remember obviously all the electromagnetic waves, and from there compare those electromagnetic waves that you remember with the options that you have been given. So I'm going to give you a mnemonic that you can use to remember the electromagnetic waves. So you can use the mnemonic: rich men in Vegas use expensive gadgets. So it goes as rich. So I'm going to just use a different color for every letter that symbolizes a wavelength, right? So I will use, say, green. So I will say rich men. Let me use one color. So rich men in Vegas in Vegas use expensive expensive gadgets. Okay, so gadgets. So this is the mnemonic that you can use to remember all the electromagnetic waves. Rich men in Vegas use expensive gadgets, where R stands for radio wave, M stands for microwaves, I stands for infrared waves, V stands for visible light, U stands for ultraviolet, X stands for X rays, G stands for gamma rays. Rich men in Vegas use expensive gadgets. So, when you compare the options that you have, you realize to say um, ultrasound is not part of your electromagnetic waves, and this leaves C as our correct answer, because yeah, gamma ray is part of them, infrared is part of them, ultraviolet is part of them, but not ultrasound. We only have one U in the mnemonic and not two U's. Our next question says, which is A8, says the following diagram shows a water wave. Which of the following correctly identifies the amplitude, the trough, and the wavelength? So I'm going to just draw a wavelength to help us remember. So my wavelength will look like this, right? And it'll start from there to there. It'll go like this and like that. I won't label it too much. I'll just label the amplitude, the trough, and the wavelength. So what is a trough? Sorry, a trough is simply the lowest point on your wave. So this will be a trough. What is a wavelength? A wavelength, or before I go to the wavelength, let me point out the crest. A crest is simply the highest point on the wave. So on this wave, we've got two crests. We've got this crest and this crest. What is a wavelength? A wavelength is simply the distance between two successive crests. This is your wavelength. What about the amplitude? Your amplitude, or the amplitude of a wave, is simply the maximum distance from its lowest point to its lowest point to its highest point. So our trough is this one, because this is the wave's lowest point and this is the wave's highest point. And this, oh sorry, not the trough but the amplitude. And this one also can also be the the amplitude of the wave, right? So this wave will have this highest point here and this lowest point here. This part of the wave also, this would be the lowest point and this would be the highest point, this would be the lowest point, the highest point, and this would be the lowest point. So this is simply the amplitude. So simply take a note of the amplitude, the trough, the wavelength, and the crest. But the question does not ask us to point out the crest, just the amplitude, the trough, and the wavelength. And from what we have learned here, we can simply say that Q is our amplitude, P is our wavelength, R is our trough. So Q for the amplitude, R for the trough, and P for the wavelength, and this leaves us with B as our correct answer. And there you have it for this question.